Welcome to the channel. You're Rev Dr. J.W. Morrison, Theologist, Central Coast, New South Wales, Australia.
Foot chase, and for the first time we are seeing the dash cam video. But the craziness didn't end there. When police open the car's trunk, they find the body of the suspect's mom. Well, Molly Hendrickson is live now. Molly, this new video coming out on the same day Ari Liggett is sentenced to life in prison.
Yeah, and it shows his mindset the night he sped away from police, then crashed his car with his mother's body hidden in bins in the trunk. And as you're about to see on this video, Liggett almost immediately plays the insanity card. And prosecutors say that showed he knew exactly what he was doing. Dash cam video shows police, rifles drawn, approach Ari Liggett moments after crashing his mom's Honda CR-V into a wall.
Right there.
At this point, they're still unaware of his mother's remains hidden in the trunk.
I mean, you guys tell me to put my hands out the window. Yeah, just put your hands out the window, not start the car back up and take off.
Listen closely. Liggett immediately tells officers he's insane, claiming he's schizophrenic and autistic, and asking police if they'll still press charges.
Which is a common cop-out.
I can't tell right from wrong. I'm insane. My psychiatrist will convince you guys that there is not probable cause that I am legally sane to you press criminal charges.
It's comments like these, prosecutors say, prove his actions were calculated, his behaviors.
Now, he doesn't look like somebody that would chop his mum up, does he?
Manipulative.
I think breaking most laws is the right thing to do because most people are demons. I think that everyone can read my mind, see the past, the future, and shape change.
Liggett goes on to tell police the world is one big conspiracy before he's led away in cuffs. And after court, Liggett's sister telling the Denver Post her brother is extremely mentally ill but was definitely sane. Liggett will spend the rest of his life in prison with no possibility of parole. Live in the newsroom, Molly Hendrickson, 7 News.
All I'm going to say to the single mothers is you need to keep your doors locked at night. Son 24 found and arrested after woman's body parts discovered in his car just days after he and his mum were reported missing. Wow. What started out as a missing persons case has turned into a murder investigation after the dismembered body of a woman was found in the back seat of a car. Ari Liggett, 24 of Centennial, Denver, was arrested 2 days after he and his 56-year-old mother were reported missing by concerned family members. Though the remains have not yet been identified, Mother Beverly Liggett is still missing. Police were asked to perform a welfare check on Liggett home and Monday in the 6200 block of East Parkview Drive, where they found poison. Family called police to perform a welfare check on the home on Monday evening. There was no one at home, but police were able to verify their whereabouts after tracing credit card transactions. He doesn't look like someone that would chop up his mother, does he? The car was then apprehended on Wednesday, and the 24-year-old was arrested after police chase, which resulted in Liggett crashing the car. He fled the scene on foot, but was captured a short time later, according to the Denver Post. Liggett is being held without bond in Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office Detention Facility on suspicion of first-degree murder. Watch out! When police searched the home, they found potassium cyanide, which is one of the most fast-acting poisons known. In 2010, Liggett was also arrested and accused of smuggling an unknown substance into a homeless shelter, which caused it to be evacuated for several hours. The chemical was not able to be identified, and he was not charged with a hazardous material violation. He was, however, charged with possession of a dangerous weapon, after he was found with a silencer in his shirt later. Ari Liggett suffered from delusions, defense claims in murder trial. Centennial, Colorado. The trial is winding down for a suburban Denver man charged with poisoning and dismembering his mother after she removed him from her will. Closing arguments are expected Friday in the first-degree murder trial of Ari Leggett, 25 of Centennial. Leggett is charged with the 2012 poisoning death of Beverly Leggett, 56. She was only 56. Ari Leggett pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. A state mental hospital found him competent to stand trial. The prosecution said in closing arguments that Leggett was arrogant, angry, and obsessed with cyanide and hated his mother. I'm telling you, single mothers that have spoiled your children, be careful. Be very, very careful. And he would have been disappointed too about pleading insanity and being told, you're not insane. Like a lot of these people with their mental health issues, a lot of the psychiatrists and psychologists are too scared to tell them that they're all right. The defense said Leggett had been severely mentally ill since a young age and is delusional. That's the defense. Ari and Beverly Leggett, who shared a home, were reported missing in mid-October 2012. 2 days later, Greenwood Village Police spotted Ari Leggett driving his mother's SUV and stopped him. His mother's remains were found in 2 plastic storage bins in the back of the vehicle. According to court records, a search of the family's home found the poison potassium cyanide, traces of blood in a freezer and bathtub, and a large kitchen knife and a handsaw in a dishwasher, the Denver Post reported. Ari Leggett told investigators that he had found his mother dead in their home and thought she committed suicide, according to records. He said he panicked and put her body in a freezer. He also told investigators he recently learned he wasn't in his mother's will because she was going off to marry another bloke. After his arrest, Leggett told officers he doesn't know right from wrong and he thought all people were demons. Leggett's trial began. Single mothers, lock your doors. Jury convicts Ari Leggett of killing and dismembering his mother. Centennial. A jury on Monday convicted Ari Leggett of first-degree murder in the death of his mother, whose dismembered remains were discovered in 2 tubs in the back of her car. Leggett quietly rocked in his seat and did not look back at family members after the verdict was read by the judge. He exhaled a deep sigh as the verdict was read and then spoke to his attorneys. He doesn't look like someone that'd chop up his mum. Be very careful. The formal sentencing hearing is scheduled for Friday, but the charge of first-degree murder carries a sentence of life in prison. Prosecutors claim that Leggett had an obsessive, years-long plan to kill his 56-year-old mother, Beverly, and she was killed in October 2012. I'm doing these videos to bring awareness to these mothers that are spoiling their children. Be very, very careful, particularly if they're on drugs and alcohol. Leggett pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity in July 2013. Prosecutors acknowledged Leggett's long history of mental health issues, but argued he maintained a method to his madness, as he spent years buying chemicals and practicing his mixtures in the Centennial home he shared with his mother. Mental illness does not equal insanity, Chief Deputy District Attorney Brian Suguioka said, and told jurors in closing arguments on Friday. The judge said Leggett spent years harbouring a deep hatred for his mother. I've always said, if you spoil these grandized golden children, they will resent you. Please listen. He always had a deep hatred for his mother, blaming her for his mental health issues. And this is what they do. They blame you for where they end up in life. Leggett poisoned his mother with cyanide mixture on October 14 or 15 in 2012 and spent the next 24 hours getting rid of the evidence, dismembering her body in the bathtub, before placing her remains in plastic tubs full of olive oil, scrubbing down the house and running a handsaw through a cycle in the dishwasher. Doesn't sound like insane to me. Lock your doors at night when you go to bed. Officers arrested Liggett on October 17, 2012, after the 24-year-old was spotted driving his mother's Honda CR-V. His mother's remains were found in 2 plastic storage bins in the back of the vehicle, and I bet she bought the storage bins. Liggett repeatedly told officers they could not prove he was sane, that he believed people were demons, and that he didn't know the difference between right and wrong. Oh, yes, he did. He knew how to put that saw in the dishwasher, didn't he? But the judge said Liggett's actions and comments were calculated and manipulative. A court-ordered mental health evaluation, and it also found Liggett to be sane. A lot of these people with anxiety, depression, and all other sorts of things would be found to be okay if they got off the alcohol and drugs and other recreational drugs. His mental illness is used by him to his advantage when he wants it. That's what the judge said, and that's what I'm going to say. The masses of these spoiled, pedestalized, bastard and bitches are using the mental illness to their advantage when they want to. And that's obvious. But public defender Natalie Gerard, who repeatedly described Liggett's actions as completely psychotic, which they were, said Liggett's mental illness was too severe for him to plan his mother's murder, which is rubbish. Just by way of the fact that he put the saw in the dishwasher was proof that he knew what he was doing. Goodall said the examiner who completed Liggett's sanity evaluation cherry-picked documents and did not consider Liggett's entire mental health history, which is what she's getting paid for, to put people in denial. So I found this article from the Supreme Court of Colorado, People v. Liggett. The people of the state of Colorado, plaintiff appellate Michelle Liggett. We're going to read it. In this interlocutory appeal pursuant to, we consider whether the trial court should have suppressed statements that the defendant, Mr. Liggett, made investigators during an interview on September 2012. The trial court suppressed the majority of the statements that Liggett made during this interview because it found that they were involuntary. We, however, hold that when considering the totality of the circumstances, the investigators never overbore Liggett's will, and thus his statements were voluntary. Accordingly, we reverse the trial court suppression order and remand the matter to the trial court for proceedings consistent of this opinion. Facts and proceedings below. A police officer stopped the vehicle that Liggett was driving and, upon asking dispatch to scan the license plate, determined that it was associated with both a missing person, Liggett's mother, and an armed and dangerous person, Liggett himself. After the police officer ordered that Liggett to turn the car off and place his hands through the window, Liggett sped off and a police chase ensued. During the chase, when Liggett attempted to make a right turn, the vehicle spun out and hit a concrete wall. Liggett then exited the vehicle and ran, and the police chased him on foot. Eventually, Liggett threw his hands up and surrendered, and the officers handcuffed him. See, these people are denialists and escapists. Then, while the officers were talking among themselves, Liggett made several unprompted statements, including, and I quote, "I can't tell right from wrong. I'm insane. My psychiatrist will confirm it," unquote. Quote, "Hey guys, I've just got a simple question. If I can convince you that there's not probable cause that I'm sane, do you press charges?" The next one, "I think I'm God. I've thought so for years." The next one, "I think breaking most laws is the right thing to do." And the next one, "I think that everyone can read my mind, see the past and the future, and shape change, and they aren't inaudible to any mortal weapons or abuse because they can use their mind to control their emotions. I think that the whole world is a conspiracy out to get me because I'm the only person who can't do a number of those things." And they grandiose themselves and think they're individually gifted and specifically gifted like no other. Without responding to Liggett's assertions, the officers placed him in the back seat of a police car because he was under arrest. At that time, Sergeant Peterson asked Liggett if he was okay. Liggett responded that he was physically fine, but that the past couple of days had been difficult. On suspicion that Liggett was involved with his mother's disappearance, Sergeant Peterson then asked Liggett if he would be willing to go to the sheriff's office and speak with some investigators. Liggett answered in the affirmative, and the police took him to the sheriff's office. There, the investigators interviewed Liggett, unhandcuffed, in a small room. Liggett first spoke primarily with Investigator Clark and then separately with Sergeant Peterson. The interview began at approximately 2:50 a.m. when Investigator Clark stated, "I know that you came down here on your own," to which Liggett contradicted, "I actually didn't, you know. People you know more wanted to talk to me." Investigator Clark responded by asking Liggett, "Do you want to talk to me? I'll help you out how I can." "Okay." Liggett did not answer the question, but rather stated, basically it boils down to this, and then launched into a speech of sorts that included the following statements. And this is classic grandiose victim narcissist. More than that, I don't even think narcissist should be applied here. I've been a victim of society my whole life. Ever since I was little, I felt that everyone has basically all the powers of God. They can shape change to the past and future, anywhere, anytime. I think it's possible that I'm the only one who doesn't have those powers yet. Goodness gracious. I think that breaking a lot of laws is the right thing to do. Eventually, Investigator Clark returned to Liggett to the task at hand, stating that he was going to read Liggett his Miranda rights and clarifying, "Really, the things sick I need to talk to you about is your mum." After Investigator Clark read Liggett his Miranda rights, Liggett asked, "Can you call a public defender to be here now?" Investigator Clark responded, "No." He then gave Liggett a written copy of his rights and asked him to sign and initial the document. As Liggett prepared to sign the document, he stated, "You know, I would be found incompetent at this present time. Would all this be rejected as evidence if I talk to you?" Investigator Clark did not answer Liggett's question, but stated, "So this is just up to you whether or not you want to talk or not." Liggett in turn did not respond directly to Investigator Clark's statement, but asked where he should sign and initial the document. After Liggett signed and initialed the document, Investigator Clark began asking him questions about whereabouts for the past couple of days, which led to questions about his mother and culminated with, "Is your mum hurt?" In response, Liggett first explained, "I think she might have committed suicide," and he eventually told Investigator Clark that she did so by ingesting potassium cyanide because she was bipolar. And while he gave additional details over the course of the interview, he maintained that he found his mum dead and panicked because he needed money and was only included in her will as a trust beneficiary because this woman had met another man as well and was going to get married and leave. Consequently, he decided to cover up her suicide so that he could continue to use her credit cards and checks. See, these people are used to being supplied financially and with housing and everything else by these single mothers. He further, and therefore they feel entitled to this. He further expounded that in an effort to conceal the suicide, he called two friends who came to the house to help him. And I just want to press on this footnote. The trial has limited the public's access to much of the evidence in this case, including the video and transcript of the interview at issue in this appeal. In defence of the trial court, we have omitted certain details that are not crucial to our analysis. Liggett also explained to the Investigator Clark why he was not responsible for his mother's death. For example, after the investigator told Liggett that the police had found potassium cyanide in the family refrigerator, Liggett stated numerous times that it would have been impossible for him to put a lethal dose of potassium cyanide in his mother's food without her noticing because of its strong odour and taste. He also stated that while he panicked and was worried about money, when he found his mother dead, he had no motive to kill her because he was now worried about money in general. And this is what these single mothers that supply and support these people don't realise. They're being leeched on. Oh, gosh, it's so obvious. In fact, he was planning on filing several lawsuits that would result in substantial judgments in his favour against his mother. In response, Investigator Clark, testing another possible motive, stated that he had information that Leggett's mother was planning on asking him to leave the house when she got married. A lot of these mothers enmesh themselves with these children, and then when somebody else comes along, it caused, this is what I've been talking about for months, this hostility and hatred. Investigator Clark asked Liggett whether that upset him. Liggett responded that he did not believe she really would have gotten married, and that it was simply untrue that his mother and her fiancé had asked him to leave. He also explained that if they did get married, he would benefit because she would be less abusive to him and he would have more money. And that's the other way around. He would have been abusing her and she would have been giving him money. Lastly, Liggett explained his version of events by repeatedly stating that his mother's suicide made sense because 1 in 20 bipolars will commit suicide, and his mother had severe bipolar, which was probably an excuse that drove him to believe that he'd get away with it. In response to Liggett's statements, Investigator Clark's tone was cordial and he never raised his voice. Indeed, throughout the entire interview, he remained calm and respectful while he persistently questioned Liggett about his actions, motives, and whereabouts over the past couple of days. Liggett provided answers to each question, never wavering from the following basic elements. His mother committed suicide, he found her dead, and 2 friends, whom he met in jail and refused to name, came to the house and helped him conceal his mother's death. Then, approximately 1 hour and 20 minutes into the interview, Investigator Clark got Liggett and a glass of water, and they took a short break. Investigator Clark then changed tactics and sympathised with Liggett by asking, "Your mum didn't treat you fair, did she?" Liggett explained that in 10th grade he realised that everyone had power to shape, change, but him, and that every day he begged for help. Investigator Clark and Liggett then had the following exchange. Investigator Clark: "And you wanted help?" Liggett: "I wanted help very, very badly." Investigator Clark: "Your mum didn't give it to you?" Liggett: "My mum told me to go to the mental hospital, which was the best thing to do." And Investigator Clark: "And you didn't want to do that?" Starting from the premise that Liggett's mum had been abusive to him his whole life, Investigator Clark had challenged Liggett, stating that he did not believe that the 2 men existed or that his mother committed suicide, but rather that Liggett murdered her. Investigator Clark then expounded on how exactly Liggett murdered her, his mother. In response, Liggett kept denying the accusations and redirected the interview by telling Investigator Clark, "I need you to go through that step by step again, and this time we're going to stop at each step and I'm going to explain to you why it didn't happen and give you evidence that it didn't happen." Investigator Clark then complied with the request by describing his account in snippets. Liggett responded by explaining why he thought Investigator Clark was wrong. At this time and during the entire interview, Liggett frequently interjected with several statements related to the themes about his beliefs and his mental state. For example, when Investigator Clark said, "You know, I really kind of need to know the names of these friends," Liggett responded, "I know you want to, but again, first of all, I think breaking the law is the right thing to do." He also told Investigator Clark that he is God, but God possessed by demons. So he's God, but he's possessed by demons. Wow. "I'm possessed by demons, and their knowledge of the force is just physically, or whatever you want to call it, stronger than mine. We live in a corrupt society where I'm the highest. I am God, so there's no one who can teach me how to be free." He also asserted that this corrupt society was out to get him, and this is common paranoia, and according to Liggett, his mother in particular sought to repress him. And this is what these single mothers don't realise, what's happening in the minds of these children when they spoil them. You know, I wanted out of the house very, very, very badly. No, he didn't. That's a lie. And I'm not her son, you know. I'm her victim. Oh, yes! There it is. The narcissistic golden child. I'm not her son, you know. I'm her victim. This is what they do to their mothers. I've been trying to press charges on her for years. I believe she's a shape changer who is willfully giving in to evil. Oh, mate. Open your eyes and lock your doors at night, you single mothers. In response, Investigator Clark patiently allowed Liggett to assert his beliefs and even conceded that Liggett was the smarter of the two. Investigator Clark then said, I told you once, I'm just a dumb cop. All right, I see, said Liggett. So I got to work with you down here. Investigator Clark said, please do, at my level. Liggett said, all right. Investigator Clark said, can you do that? And Liggett said, I'll do my best. Got a bit of a way to go. Investigator Clark then attempted to get Liggett to speak at his level and for the remainder of the interview to tell him the truth. Despite the investigator's variety of different interrogation tactics, Liggett maintained his version of events. The interview with Investigator Clark ended with Liggett explaining that his mother could have put the potassium cyanide into any food substance to commit suicide, while acknowledging that it was possible but unlikely that she accidentally ingested it. In total, Investigator Clark's interview of Liggett lasted over 3 hours, including 2 short breaks during which Investigator Clark got Liggett a drink of water. At no point did Liggett accept any responsibility for his mother's death. Then, after an hour and 18-minute break, during which Liggett used the restroom and the investigators got Liggett breakfast and 2 cups of coffee, Sergeant Peterson, who had spoken with Liggett in the police car, interviewed him for approximately 1 hour. At the outset, he stated, I just don't know if there was anything you wanted to talk to me about because we had seen each other earlier tonight when you were in the car. After a digression, during which Liggett confirmed that he was not injured and learned that Sergeant Peterson was investigating his mother's disappearance, Liggett directed the interview by asking Sergeant Peterson, so tell me about what's going through your mind about the investigation. Sergeant Peterson countered by stating that he really was trying to get Liggett to share his thoughts, and for the remainder of this portion of the interview, he told Liggett that he knew Liggett had killed his mother. Instead of asking what happened, Sergeant Peterson asked Liggett why he murdered his mother, for example stating, Liggett, will you tell me why you had to kill your mum? Please? Just tell me why it had to happen. There had to be a reason. Again, Liggett responded by maintaining that his mother committed suicide because she was bipolar. He also emphasised that the same themes that he had discussed with Inspector Clark. Everyone has the power to shape change. They have the power to see the past and the future. They have the power to read everyone's mind. They have the power to influence events. With everyone's power, it doesn't make any sense except to repress people like me who are possessed by demons and haven't been able to tap into those powers. My views of the right and wrong are very different from society. I believe that for me, to commit most crimes against people is the right thing to do. My mum was actually fairly vicious towards me. Every tone, every gesture, every mean was meant to humiliate, repress and weaken me, which I don't believe is true. I am God, the way, the truth and the light. Approximately halfway through this portion of the interview, Sergeant Peterson asked Liggett, I had a couple of other questions if you don't mind, if that's okay, or do you want to stop? Liggett responded, no, you can ask what you're going to ask. Sergeant Peterson then continued to ask Liggett why he killed his mother, and not only did Liggett not tell Sergeant Peterson why he supposedly killed his mother, but he disagreed with Sergeant Peterson about the basic premise that he had in fact killed her. If you tell me your evidence, I can tell you why it didn't happen that way. Instead of answering, Sergeant Peterson kept pressing him, even addressing him in third person. Sergeant Peterson said, why did Liggett have to kill his mum? If you're God, you would know. And Liggett did not kill his mum. And then Sergeant Peterson, we both know he did. Liggett, we don't know he did. Sergeant Peterson, no, we both know he killed his mum, but I don't know the reason why. And you know that. And Liggett said, Liggett didn't kill his mum. After that exchange, Sergeant Peterson told Liggett that he was going to have to leave this room because he had a meeting to attend. The interview then ended similarly to how the entire colloquy had proceeded, with Sergeant Peterson asking, "Are you going to tell me why you had to kill her?" And Liggett responded, "I didn't do it." And the police officer then handcuffed Liggett and took him to jail. Subsequently, the people charged Liggett with 1 count each of first-degree murder, crime of violence, and vehicular looting. Liggett pled not guilty by reason of insanity, and the court ordered a sanity evaluation. Dr. Wartzel of the Colorado Mental Health Institute of Pueblo conducted a sanity and mental condition evaluation, which included reviews of Liggett's interview on the 17th of October 2012. During pretrial motions, Liggett moved to suppress the statements he made during the interview on October 17, 2012, arguing that they were involuntary. The trial court found that Liggett's question to Investigator Clark, "Can you call a public defender to be here now?" was an unequivocal invocation of his right to counsel, and as a result, it found that Investigator Clark violated Liggett's Miranda rights when he responded no. The trial court therefore found it important to delineate between the initial statements at the sheriff's office before the Miranda warnings and then the statements subsequent to the Miranda warnings. After considering several factors, including the Miranda violation, the court denied Liggett's motion as to the statements he made before Investigator Clark violated his Miranda rights. The trial court, however, suppressed the statements Liggett made after the investigator denied his right to an attorney because of the Miranda violation and because it found those statements to be involuntary. Further, because Dr. Wartzel watched the video of the interview as part of his evaluation, the trial court ordered a new sanity evaluation and precluded Dr. Wartzel from testifying at trial. The people then filed this interlocutory appeal. Standard review. Whether statements should be suppressed because they are involuntary presents a mixed question of law and fact. As the court trial's factual findings were, we defer them as long as they are supposed to be competent evidence. We review the legal effect of those facts, however. The analysis. The issue here is whether the investigation coerced Liggett into speaking with them so as to overbear his will. To resolve this issue, we first review the law surrounding voluntariness. We then apply this law to the facts of the case and conclude that the investigators did not coerce Liggett into making the statements, but rather Liggett spoke voluntarily. Law of voluntariness and coercion. In order for the defendant's statements, and this goes into some stuff which I don't think we'll do, we'll go to the conclusion. The forebearing reasons we hold that when considering the totality of the circumstances, the investigation never overbore Liggett's will, and thus his statements were voluntary. Accordingly, we reverse the trial court's suppression order and remand the matter to the trial court for proceedings consistent with his opinion. So, he poisoned his mum, he chopped her up, part of the reason being that he was scared that she was going to leave. She was getting married to another man. He was leeching on her. There's mum there. She got chopped up. He was leeching on her and using her for supply, financial, probably housing and other supply. There's the partner and the mother. And this was, his fear was that mummy was going to leave him and he was going to have to fend for himself, which was too much for him to handle, and therefore he killed his mother. You've been watching the Ari Liggett situation with Rev Dr. J.W. Morrison, theologist. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's a little bit long-winded. I tried to do my best with it. But if you're a single mother, don't spoil these children. Don't be a supplier or just one of these people that enable dysfunction and stuff. It will come back to bite you. I've said this all along. They resent their mothers later in life, and they even estrange them, and they even kill them. There's one step further. This is Rev Dr. J.W. Morrison, theologist, Central Coast, New South Wales, Australia. Thank you for joining me. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, subscribe to the religious channel or the tradie channel for more of this content. Thank you for joining me, and bye for now.